A few months ago, I made a video on YouTuber Isaac Butterfield and his content on the body positivity movement. I pointed out that while it's all well and good for Isaac to make fun of fat people and soy boys online, it didn't change the fact that Isaac had abandoned his own fitness series after a few months due to a dwindling view count compared to his more successful anti-fat videos. I had a good laugh at Isaac's expense, his fans took the criticism with grace and decorum, and I left it there. I held off on making a follow-up video until now, partly because I felt I'd said everything I wanted to, but also because I wanted to give Isaac a chance to find his footing again, restart his average man movement, and serve as an example of the fitness and masculinity that he uses to make fun of random teenagers online. And after 5 months of patient observation, I'm happy to announce that Isaac has actually managed to defy my expectations and stick to something for an entire year. That, of course, being a complete lack of any further fitness content. Yeah, by the time this video goes up, it will have been an entire year since Isaac's last video even mentioning the average man movement. It's well and truly dead by this point, which, of course, raises a question. What on earth has Isaac been doing with all that extra time? Well, just like last year, it seems that Isaac has taken the energy that he could have put into his fitness movement and instead used it to continue making fun of fat people online. That and some new things. You see, Isaac recently announced that he's planning to release a book, Better Man, described as a manifesto on modern masculinity. Here's how Isaac describes it.
It's not a self-help book, it's not an autobiography, it's a conversation between me at 30 years old to men younger than me, to men older than me, to dads, to any man that will listen. And I genuinely believe what I talk about in this book will make you a better version of yourself, a better man.
And at face value, there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with this. As cringy as I find masculinity tutorials to be, I think that there is a need for positive male role models in this day and age. I guess Isaac will have to do in the meantime. Because, to be totally honest, I don't find Isaac to be someone that anyone should listen to, considering he doesn't even listen to his own advice half the time.
Get to the gym, push your body, grow, work hard on something.
So what I want to do today is simple. I wanted to take some time before Isaac's book comes out to point out what kind of man Isaac is compared to the man he portrays himself as. I want to trace a line of all the things Isaac advocates for compared to all the things Isaac actually does, or more accurately, doesn't do. But first, a couple of disclaimers. First, this video isn't just going to be 20 minutes of me saying, oh well, you said this thing but did that. There is a lot of that because, well, it's Isaac, but I will also be trying to uncover why this is the case. The second disclaimer concerns an argument I see a lot of when it comes to any criticism of Isaac, this being that, oh, he's just telling jokes, he's not being serious, it's just comedy. And to an extent, I agree. It is a joke that Isaac feels qualified to give anyone advice, or say stuff like this.
Haven't been to the gym in a year? Get off your fat fucking ass and go and do it.
Considering what we've already covered. But, of course, this isn't what they mean. Isaac, and by extension his fans, are giving him an out if necessary, hiding behind the guise of what you could generously call comedy to distance yourself from an otherwise authentically held opinion. So this time I came prepared, and all the things I'll be discussing are from Isaac's videos where he claims to be sincere about what he's saying, and where he's in the thumbnail looking at the camera all serious so you know that he really means it. So Isaac, you don't need to wear that shirt that says you're guilty of comedy anymore. All charges have been dropped due to a lack of evidence. Let's start with Isaac's concerns about modern men becoming weaker, as you can see across many of his videos throughout his channel history. For instance, something I already covered in his video, Weak Men Are a Danger to Society.
Men are weaker today than ever before. Alright, their minds are weaker, but it's also physically. Men today can't bench press, can't squat, can't deadlift as much as the men 30, 40 years ago.
Now, as I said in my last video, Isaac still hasn't demonstrated his ability to do any of these things in his own short-lived fitness series, nor has he stopped wearing merch of himself doing them, so we're already off to a bad start. But I'm more interested in what Isaac says next.
That has been proven in studies.
Of course, Isaac doesn't actually show those studies for reasons that will become clear very shortly. And this caught my attention because Isaac has previously expressed annoyance whenever someone he doesn't like fails to cite a study, seen here in his video on toxic masculinity.
Amanda Rishworth says research, what research? Care to show it.
And even then, this is also out of character because he spent several years arguing against the relevance of peer-reviewed studies, as you can see in his videos on the fat acceptance community.
Do not believe what you read. Just because it is a peer-reviewed journal, go and look at it yourself. So I guess the important thing to remember here is take a lot of peer-reviewed journals and some scientific papers with a grain of salt.
So what Isaac has done here is interesting. He's cited a study while also not citing it at the same time, and this is after both arguing for and against the relevance of these studies also at the same time. So what does Isaac believe? I guess it depends on the day. It almost seems like Isaac is only willing to believe in science and studies so long as it helps him legitimize his point, only to casually disregard them the second they become inconvenient to him. And this is best demonstrated by how little research there actually is on this topic. For starters, most discussions of strength differences between generations come from those guys on Twitter who hide behind classical sculptures and have traditionalist or carnivore or Chad in their username, and brag about how masculine they think they are by playing dolls with Wojaks all day. Look, this one thinks he's raising a family. But if we're focusing on people whose opinions are worth anything, there is one paper that made the rounds a few years ago, to my knowledge the only peer-reviewed study on comparative strength levels between millennial men and those in 1985. Published by the Journal of Hand Therapy in 2016, this study examined the grip and pinch strength of 237 healthy millennial males between 20 to 34 years old, and discovered that the average grip strength had fallen roughly 26 pounds in 30 years. And if you're struggling to come to grips with that number, don't worry. It's then explained that this is because we've shifted away from manual labour jobs as the norm. It's a largely incidental drop due to employment factors. Now, first things first, this obviously isn't the kind of strength that Isaac was talking about, at least not directly. This research is pretty mundane compared to the gripping story that Isaac has told his audience. But that still raises the question as to why Isaac refuses to cite it at all. After all, he's no stranger to pulling up random articles that back up his arguments, nor is he squeamish about flat out lying about other articles that would prove him wrong if he represented them fairly, as I've covered in the past. What does he have to gain by not providing the details of this research? Well, that's a question that's answered when you actually watch Isaac's fitness content. Don't feel bad if you haven't, not many people did, and there really isn't that much of it to begin with. But when you sit down to watch the first video in his Average Man series, Men vs Body Positivity, you'll notice that for every exercise Isaac does, he relies exclusively on lifting straps.
Because it takes all of the grip strength out of it. So I can lift relatively alright. Yeah. But I got no grip strength.
Now, I don't have a problem with that. I couldn't give a damn what anybody does with their workout, so long as they're actually trying. Not that Isaac is trying anymore, but still, I'm not personally bothered by the usage of straps. But unfortunately for Isaac, he's cultivated a fan base that feels entitled to shit on people for working on themselves or putting themselves out there. So they made their disdain for Isaac and his weak grip strength very clear in the comments. Isaac himself even appears to agree in this video. Listen to how he talks about them.
Do you want the pussy straps?
He's at least insecure enough in using them that he feels the need to comment on it, and I'm willing to believe that this is why Isaac later lied about the grip strength study. I mean, you can't really cite research about how men are becoming weaker only for that research to prove that you are the weak men, can you? That probably hit a bit too close to home for Isaac, so he felt the need to cover it up for his audience so they wouldn't realise that he doesn't meet the standards that he holds others to. He can't appear weak to his audience because they won't take his words seriously or buy his book explaining how to be a real man. His hold over them would slip, and if that happened, not even lifting straps would be able to save him. He has to keep pretending to be a man his audience would respect so that he can keep milking them for views and cash. and it's hardly limited to this one instance. For example, listen to how Isaac describes his approach to acting as a good role model for his son to follow.
I've got to make sure that I am being the best version of myself so that my son looks at that and goes, well, okay, if dad's working his hardest and at work and with stand-up and in the gym and all that type of stuff, you know, he's going to follow suit, and I think it's a good way to set a base for the type of man that you want to be.
That's a nice sentiment, and pretty respectable if you take it at face value. But you need to remember that this footage of Isaac in the gym working out with bodybuilder Lee Priest was nearly 8 months old by the time this video went live, which doesn't really help his case, does it? It's all well and good for Isaac to advocate going to the gym or looking after your fitness, but then he completely undermines his point by relying on archival footage of him working out because there's so little evidence that he actually does anything. Sometimes he doesn't even use footage of himself working out, but just relies on stock footage.
I think the reason most of us get the shits with these type of questions or demands is because we all try to look after ourselves, or at least we don't gorge ourselves and expand to the point where we need 2 seats.
Is he so lazy that he can't even be bothered to pretend anymore? This is Isaac Butterfield in a nutshell. He wants all of the clout and esteem and respect of being a role model, an influencer, one of the so-called greats among figures like Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan, but without any of the consistency that makes them notable in the first place. I mean, there's a central irony in Isaac preaching the virtues of hard work and pushing through character building experiences.
Put yourself in bad situations and learn how to deal with them. Whether it's a sauna, an ice bath, or running, whatever, something that sucks, learn how to deal with it.
But then later taking a sponsorship from a sweat blanket company that burns calories for you.
Bon Charge is a holistic wellness brand with a huge range of evidence-based products to optimize your life in every way. If you want to burn some extra calories and help with your weight loss, if you want to detoxify because you've eaten badly for the last couple of days, well, I've got the product for you. The sauna blanket, ladies and gentlemen, it works by raising your heart rate to that of physical exercise, so it burns a lot of calories.
Wow, Isaac, you mean that for the low price of $999, I can buy a blanket that helps me burn 200 calories? But wait, if I apply code Butterfield, I can save 15% off my purchase, which brings it down to a much more affordable $850 instead. Gee, thanks Isaac. You shouldn't have. No, really, you shouldn't have. Of course, Isaac's audience doesn't notice this glaring inconsistency because Isaac quickly pivots to attacking easy targets that he finds on TikTok, making himself look better in comparison. This is how he's able to stand on such a shaky foundation from which to grift to his audience. It's all smoke, mirrors, and misdirection. And again, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with fitness or masculinity, but Isaac is the last person who should be weaponizing these things against other people, considering he only does it to distract you from the fact that he never holds himself to any standards.
Anything that you can do to activate your body, get it happening, get it moving, is just a positive thing. Now, soy boys, no. They don't like doing that. The only activity that a soy boy gets is when they're protesting something that doesn't even fucking concern them. That's the workout. That's this big fucking workout that they've made a whole video about. That looks like a fucking warm-up.
And you know what? Maybe Isaac's grip strength wouldn't be such a point of shame for him if he actually did hold himself to some standards for once. And this brings me to perhaps the most egregious example of Isaac's failure as a role model. The thing that, in all honesty, convinced me to make this follow-up video in the first place. To start, I wanted to briefly turn our attention to the Buttsman Fitness Challenge that I covered in my first video on Isaac. Back then, it was the only reference to any fitness on Isaac's website, considering the dedicated site to the average man movement was dead, as was its official Instagram page. So I made that connection, assuming that it was the most logical leap to make. But as it turns out, I was wrong to do this. Because, you see, this exercise routine has nothing to do with Isaac's abandoned fitness movement from 2023, even though that was, to my knowledge, the only sensible option. So why would Isaac have a random exercise routine listed on his website if it wasn't part of his failed fitness movement? Well, why don't I let Isaac explain?
I was talking about Lizzo and the body positivity movement. And you know what I decided to do? I decided that it would be better for me, rather than being negative about all of those people, is to come out and actually try and help people out. And that's what I have decided to do.
Now, this doesn't really clarify anything because it's the exact same thing Isaac said at the start of his Average Man movement, as you can see here.
And you know I always talk about body positivity and all that stuff being absolute bullshit. Why don't we spend our time, rather than whinging about ourselves, actually getting after it? I said to him, mate, wouldn't it be good if there was an opportunity for you to watch someone who you know or who you enjoy watching their content on the internet actually go into the gym and show what they do?
And we all know how that ended. But things become a lot clearer when you realise that this video was posted to Isaac's second channel, Lil Buttsman, at the end of 2020. So, is this where Isaac has been leaving all of his fitness content? You would assume so, considering that's what Isaac claims.
You need to be able to have someone who you can look at and go, okay, this person's dealt with these things, come out of the other side, it's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it, so make sure you subscribe for that.
But, of course, that didn't last very long. The videos covering Isaac's fitness journey were exceedingly rare, with only 5 videos even gesturing towards men's fitness being uploaded before finally dying in September of 2021 in Isaac's final video on the subject, The Better Man Challenge, which his upcoming book seems to be named after. Probably doesn't bode well, let's be honest. Isaac quickly pivoted to videos about opening rare Pokemon card decks, so I guess we all know which gym Isaac really likes spending his time in. Well, that and various paranormal investigation videos, likely because Isaac is now haunted by the ghost of his dead fitness channel. And for those of you keeping track at home, yes, this now means that Isaac has abandoned 2 fitness movements that he started for his audience, both of which ended less than a year after they began. So, congrats on the consistency, I guess. I don't really know how anyone can continue to take Isaac seriously after this revelation. Not only does Isaac not follow his own advice or live up to his own standards, but when provided an opportunity to be a leader, to exert that influence over his audience that he loves so much, he fails repeatedly. Let me put this in a timeline so we can see the full picture. So, Isaac's video on the second channel introducing his workout plan was uploaded on the 30th of December 2020. He then occasionally uploads various videos related to men's health over a period of 9 months before stopping completely, and that's with me being generous as to what I include in this movement too. The last video to explicitly be a part of the Blokes Health movement was uploaded on the 21st of January. 3 weeks after the movement began, and I shit you not, talks about failing your New Year's resolution. I guess Isaac decided to speak from personal experience this time. But after this movement died, Isaac stayed pretty silent on the whole role model thing until the end of December 2022 when he uploaded the first video in his Average Man series, which ran for 5 videos up until mid-April of 2023. He then remained silent for almost a year before announcing his upcoming book, which officially releases on the 1st of May 2024, and that's where we are now. Well, almost. You see, there's one tiny little detail that I haven't mentioned yet. You probably didn't notice that Isaac's 2020 video introducing his Buttsman Fitness Challenge is subtitled Blokes Health is Back. And if you did, you probably assumed it's because Isaac wanted to reintroduce fitness to the masses like he would then go on and fail to do in his Average Man movement a few years later. But this isn't actually the case. Listen to what Isaac has to say and be as blown away as I was.
But also, I really wanted to use this channel now as the new Blokes Health. And now, for people who haven't been around for a long time, Blokes Health was something that I developed a couple of years ago, and it was going to be all about just helping men develop their mental health, physical health.
Yep, that's right. Years before the Average Man movement in 2023, even before the Buttsman Fitness Challenge in 2021, Isaac had already abandoned another fitness movement years earlier in 2018. I'm losing my mind. He's done the same thing 3 times. This one also has its own separate YouTube channel and Facebook page, much like the others, but don't get too excited, they're also dead. And that's it. So what can we learn about Isaac from all of this? Well, quite a lot, and none of it looks very good for him. Isaac repeatedly introduces an idea or movement to lend himself credibility in the eyes of his audience, sticks with it just long enough until he gets bored, and then abandons it. His audience never even seems to remember these failed projects either, because Isaac does a good enough job of churning out slop every day that any embarrassing or inconvenient failures can quickly be buried under a mountain of videos bullying fat people on TikTok, or weak men, or any other group that Isaac pretends to help only to abandon when it becomes too much effort, over and over again. This is a repeated pattern of behaviour, and it shows no signs of stopping. At this point, you could probably make some predictive algorithm to guess when this is going to happen next after we've all forgotten about his book. It looks like we're due another big announcement at the end of 2025, just in time for Isaac's New Year's resolution. Who knows, maybe this time he'll finally get it right. And it's ironic, isn't it, that a man whose only consistent trait is a lack of consistency, a lack of dedication, integrity, and any other trait that he says makes you a real man, feels that he's qualified to lead as an example for the young men in his audience, or the people who do need a strong role model in their lives. Because ultimately, they're the ones who are suffering here. Isaac continuously makes videos expressing his concern that men are being abandoned, left behind and forgotten, stagnating.
We as men are standing still in this world, like stagnant water in the footsteps of progress.
God, you can just feel how cool he thought that line was. But what does Isaac actually do for his audience of abandoned young men? Nothing. In fact, he very quickly abandons them, much in the same way that he likes to say the rest of the world has. And even if Isaac has forgotten about his audience because he's too distracted by the sense of self-importance he's given himself, these people are still in need of the role models and guidance that Isaac has just deprived them of. Looking in the comments section of Isaac's numerous failed fitness movements, you can see a lot of similarities across the 6 years that he's been pulling this same trick. They identify with the issues that Isaac raises, they feel abandoned or the need for some guidance, they even express gratitude to him for offering a solution to the problems that they face. How grateful do you think they were when Isaac also abandoned them, because it's easier to tear down fat people on TikTok? How do you think they felt back in 2018, 2021, and last year in 2023? Isaac is a parasite, leeching off the struggles of his audience to lend himself esteem, clout, and very often money as a result. He's literally being paid to keep his audience miserable and then offer himself as a solution, take their money and run. And then once his audience outgrows him, more misguided young men take their place and the cycle repeats. And this brings me to Isaac's book, Better Man, his manifesto on modern masculinity, the next step in his destructive cycle of exploitation. Now, I don't know what's going to be in this book, but I'd be willing to bet any money that the only reason he's publishing a book instead of making another YouTube series is that he has a valid excuse to dump it out there and then not work on it anymore. That and the fact that it's infinitely more profitable. And of course, nothing is more important to Isaac than the money he can make off his audience's insecurities. Insecurities that Isaac, more often than not, has had a hand in reinforcing. To any of Isaac's fans who've made it this far, I hope you realise that this is the kind of person you've come here to support. Somebody who's willing to abandon you the second it benefits him, and then turn around and have you pay him to tell you why you've been abandoned and what you can do about it. You're being played because it makes him money. All I can say is that you shouldn't reward Isaac for his cowardice. Don't buy his book, don't encourage him to keep doing this to young men in the future. Don't let him keep you in the same cycle of negativity that only lines his pockets at your expense. You deserve better than that, and you deserve to know what kind of man Isaac is beneath the surface. And Isaac, if by some chance you're watching this, don't feel shy about putting this video on blast for your audience in order to advertise your book like you've already done to some of your other critics. If your actions are something defensible, then defend them. Try standing by something you've done for once. At least go for 1 out of 4 so it's not a complete wash. I'm sure your audience has a lot of questions about what kind of man you really are, so maybe you should just be honest about it for once. But if I'm being honest, I doubt you will. Because at the end of the day, I know exactly what kind of man you really are, and I'm sure you do too. Well, that's everything I have to say about that, at least until 2025. If you've come here to leave a negative comment, make sure to also donate to the charities that I've linked in the pinned comment below. These charities are built around providing structure and guidance to young men, so if you really value masculinity, let's try and have a positive impact on its future. I also once again want to encourage everyone to leave some examples of good role models for men to follow who don't put themselves above others in the process. If masculinity is about using your strength for good, let's try and hold our role models to the same standards. Noel Diesel, Obese to Beast and Jeff Nippard are great guys to follow who each cover various aspects of the fitness industry, and I can't recommend them enough as a replacement for Isaac's content. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, please make sure to subscribe, leave a like and let me know what you think in the comments below. I've got a few videos planned out for the man arc that I'm working on and I'd love to have you here for them. If you're feeling extra generous, make sure to check out my Patreon. It's a flat fee of €1 per month and lets you see videos early before they go live, and it really helps support the channel. That's all for this time, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!